Divergent Comics YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be starting a series that I'm going to be doing with my friend, my brother, David Green of Limelight Entertainment. We're going to be talking about something I feel like a lot of people may be intrigued by or just may want to get more understanding on. But this is going to be a series I feel like that will give everyone some insight into not only my process, but also David's process in regards to not just creating comics, but I feel like this will be more so in regards to creating any type of IP in general, which David really specializes in on his in Limelight Entertainment. David, how you doing, man?
Yo, yo, yo. What's up, everybody? Thank you for having me on. Um, as he mentioned, I'd love to really get into the nitty-gritty details of creating, and not just on the creator side, on the design side, but also on the business side. And I do a channel called Go Qreate, which is where I talk about a lot of this stuff, as well as my creator side is the Limelight Comics or Limelight Entertainment. So
Yep. If you're catching this, definitely check the show notes. You will see a link to the Go Qreate channel. And I think I added it to my favorite channels list. So check that out
yeah.
as well. He has some great content. A lot of what I'm doing at Divergent Comics when it comes to like just making these stories, whether it be Bronze Tide or by the time this goes up, the upcoming Lionheart comic comes from really just working with David on getting some of the little details right. So we're going to go over some of those details in the next couple of videos between this one and I believe we're going to do about maybe two more videos just to kind of give everyone an idea of the entire process of going from concept to completed product of the comic or the IP, and then talking about marketing, how to set up business structure and things like that in regards to making sure that you have not only just a successful comic line or IP in general, but also just focusing on providing information on how to make the overall product marketable. And if you want to make this into like a career or something that you can build off of, hopefully this information will help you out. So,
Oh yeah,
David.
I'm sure it will. Yeah.
Right. I feel like it's been helping me so far, so I'm hoping that people take some nuggets from this.
Yeah.
So with this one, this first series, we're going to talk about um, how to make comics in this episode, and we're going to really just break down the whole process of going from concept of making comics all the way through the final draft just before they get to the art. And let's kind of
Right.
just get started with that concept to outline aspect of it. What should people look for and how should they approach that stuff?
I want to say everybody should know their self. And what I mean by that is, I came from a background of teaching, and the way that I learn is not always by sitting down, being in school, learning through books and stuff. Um, I can, I would take comic books and I would look through and I would really I would study the panels and the layouts, and it's it's just beyond telling a story, because the panels are telling a story themselves as well as what's in the panels is telling a story because it's all a flow. Um, and so I started to learn how to do comics that way. I wasn't a big comic reader. I used to read comics when I was like a child, but as I got older, I didn't read comics. I still don't read comics that much today, but I look through them for design and I study them. Um, so I'm a student of comics, but I'm not really a comic reader. I read some comics, but I say know yourself and how you learn, because that's needed in order to move forward. Um,
Mhm.
and so once you have come up with that idea, and let's just throw something out there, idea, a family, decides to go on a trip to Disneyland. Disneyland is now held hostage, and they have to help save the day. That's your premise or your idea, and so you got that down on paper. That becomes your base foundation concept, and from there you want to move on to, well, what genre does this fit into? Mm-hmm. And so, what do you think about that, Gary?
So that's big. Genre, I think, is probably one of the first steps that people should jump into when it comes to the creation process. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Once you get the concept, come up with your genre. Like you mentioned, like we can even change it to another concept of um, a boy and his dog are walking down the street when uh, the sky changes and things get bleak. You can go a couple of different routes with that idea or that concept, and then you can make it into a different genre. Okay, so the sky gets bleak and aliens come. Okay, now it's a sci-fi. Or the sky gets bleak and the kid is having to run with his dog through a dark cemetery because now demons are chasing him. Okay, now it's a horror / thriller. So you can take these concepts into a lot of different areas once you understand what you want to do, and then go into that genre is where you're going to kind of start to get the meat and potatoes of what you're trying to tell. And then from there, where do you go, David?
Yeah. And notice how it's like a yin yang. As he mentioned, the genre can affect the concept, can affect how you tell the concept, as well as you adding something to the concept can affect the genre or mixing of the genre. So I like that was mentioned. And so from there, this is something, the next step I think is overlooked a lot, because I think it's seen as a business step as opposed to a creator step. Because a lot of times as creators, we want to get something, we want to tell what we want to tell, And so this next step I consider is audience. And you want to do this early. Find out who your audience is. And are you writing for yourself, or are you writing for the audience, someone else? As I mentioned before, the first book I wrote, The Captivating Light, that was a story that I wanted to tell, and you weren't going to influence that story. Nobody was. And because I wanted to tell that. So that was something that I wanted to write for myself, and I knew that there were others out there. Now, the second book, Conquered Crowns, that was written to an audience. And so therefore, everything was catered to that audience. And I was like, okay, they'll like this. And, I'll put this in the story and things like that. And so understand, are you writing for yourself, or are you writing for the audience? Now, audience should always be defined as gender, age, location, and like. That's how you kind of define your audience off of those 4 things.
Okay, yeah, I was definitely going to ask you about that because, when people think of audience, like you mentioned, they automatically think, oh, they're talking business, they're not talking story or creation. But that is important because when you are creating a story, for example, Marvel, they created Iron Man or Spider-Man to cater to a specific audience. Specifically Spider-Man, everyone talks about him as the everyday type of superhero. He's the one that he's always down on his luck. Nothing ever goes right for him, but he always somehow finds a way to overcome. That's supposed to be, and I believe Stan Lee said this, like Spider-Man is supposed to be able to represent anyone. So when he was creating that character, that was the mindset of creating the character. But like we mentioned with genre, you have to do your research. You have to factor in, what the story that you're trying to tell is going to entail. And so when you come up with the genre, you then have to look at, okay, now in this genre, what types of people enjoy this? And in that genre, you have to then narrow down the audience. Because, for example, if we want to talk about maybe horror or sci-fi, there's a wide range of audience in that. In the horror genre, you have the very niche slasher films, which caters mostly to a certain demographic of people, and then you have the horror sci-fi combination type films where it
Mhm.
uh, really resonates with certain types of or certain demographics of people. So you have to take those things into effect early on in the process. Pretty much once you figure out your concept and you figure out your genre, your audience should always be your very next step, because that's going to really influence, how your story is going to be received. Because if I'm telling, for example, if I'm telling a story in Bronte that's catered towards a sci-fi audience, but I write it in the genre of horror, it's not going to be received well because the genre and the audience does not mix. So those are things that people
Right.
have to be really cognizant of when they're coming up with their stories.
Yeah. And sometimes, actually many times, the audience and idea can even be flipped around, because this is something of a business move where you find the gap, the need
Hmm.
gap of what's missing. You're like, oh well, we got webs heroes, we got iron heroes, but we don't have this street level hero. And so that's
Hmm.
called a need gap, where you're filling in the need. And so you are actually thinking about the audience first, and then you think about the idea of, okay, well, know what,
Yep.
let's do this here. So you can do them flip flop, but a lot of times, at least for me, it's the idea first before the audience.
Yeah, me too. I usually come
Yeah.
up with the idea and then go in this order as well. So what do you got after audience?
I would say research. Um, and what I mean by research, it would be, now that you got your idea, it's a horror slash film. Um, it's this audience right here, this niche audience that I want to cater to. But what can I do to make it different? To make it different, to
Hmm.
differentiate it. What's already done? Research what's already done. How many times it's been done. Um, take note of the characters that are in there. What can you do to make it, like you said, make it different? That what can you do to give it some uh, customary stuff? For instance, One Piece. I keep talking your head off about this, and it just speaks to the love of it. But it's it's a pirate movie. It's like we seen, it to me, it got a little bit of Peter Pan. It got a
Hmm.
little bit of Pirates of the Caribbean, and they took it, and it's like they did their research, and it's like, oh, you know what? Let's make this custom. Instead of saying superpowers or even powers or abilities, let's just call it devil fruit. So throughout the series, they're not saying, "Oh, you got powers." They're saying, "Oh, you ate a devil fruit." So it's things like that, instead of to make it your world unique.
Right.
um so you want to look at, how can I make this world unique? Maybe it's a slasher horror film that's uh mixed with a different genre,
Hmm.
something we haven't seen. So you want to really do your research and see if people would be receptive to it. Maybe you got some friends or some people willing to listen to the concept of you mixing genres or whatever you came up with, and that
Hmm.
becomes a part of your research as well. Get inside of what is that? Reddit, uh,
Yeah,
Quora. Is that, am I saying that right? Quora, Quora.
I think
That
so.
that
Yeah.
website. Yeah, get inside those groups, because those are where your customers are. If
Hmm.
if you have a horror film or a horror book, you're not marketing to other creators. You're marketing to the horror people. Now you will
Hmm.
get some of those creators who like horror,
You're right.
but you're marketing to those horror create groups, because that's where the customers are. Um, so you want to be in those groups. You want to mingle with them. You want to, and those things become part of your research. Find
Right.
out, research, what's the purpose of you writing this? What's the
Hmm.
purpose of the characters in the story?
Hmm.
uh, Purpose of the world, uniqueness of the world. So a lot of research should go into it.
Yeah, something you said I really want you to kind of touch on a little bit more.
Mm.
because you and I have had this conversation recently, and I feel like you know what I'm about to
I
ask
think I
you.
know it. I'm
But you
ready.
mentioned about the custom, make it customized. So
Yeah.
we you and I have talked offline about this a lot, where it's like, there's no new ideas. It's just
Hmm.
finding some way to kind of take an idea that's already been used and make it your own. So kind of break
Hmm.
that down a little bit, because you talked about it one time before, on,
Right.
I think, on your own channel, and I believe you made a couple of posts about it on your own personal social media. So I want you to kind of dive into that a little bit, detail, so that people can kind of understand what you mean by that.
Okay. So everything that you're seeing, even all these top creators and shows that we're seeing that we love, we like, oh man, this is unique, and this is the first of its kind, and it's not. And even when you hear the creators talk about it, they say no, no, we borrow, steal. They say different words, but they say no. They even tell you that it's no new ideas. I listened to the creator of Marvel Snap, and he sat there and he showed on a presentation that he said no, not one of our ideas were original. He said we just
Mhm,
borrow from different games to make our game, which makes it somewhat original.
mhm.
It makes it original because we put it together. So it's almost like a math problem. How you got that's a shame. I'm a math teacher and I can't even. But probability. So you got probability, and each different probability, basically you get a new answer. And so
Mhm,
that's basically what you're doing when you're creating or designing. You're rolling this probability dice and you're creating something what we consider to be new. It's not technically new, but we consider it to be new.
yeah.
Because just by you putting a spin on it, that's
Mhm,
different than the last thing,
yep.
you know. So it becomes your unique idea because it came from you and you put your spin on it. Um,
Mhm.
which is one of the reasons and Blue Beetle, I felt that, overall, I'm 50-50 with the movie
Mhm,
because I felt like the director borrowed so much from other movies instead of making it his own.
mhm.
Um, even I'm talking about from the way that they did certain shots,
Yeah.
and it just made it feel like these are just different shots from different movies put into Blue Beetle, and I felt like
Mhm.
there was a lot of missed opportunity. Uh, and so those are the things that I'm talking about. When you borrow, don't borrow and make it feel like the same thing that we've already done or seen.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Just don't
so
copy and paste.
yes, yes, and there were so many scenes in that made it feel like that, and it's a lot of times we get on the actors, and it's not the actors because the actors didn't write the movie,
Right.
you know. But I'm confident about Blue Beetle. I like them overall, and I can't wait to see more of them. But when we talk about things like we said, we mentioned a few minutes ago, One Piece. It's a simple pirate concept.
Mhm,
His concept is simple. He tells you in the first 10 minutes, he said, I want to find the One Piece and I want to be the number one, I want to be king of the pirates.
mhm,
Simple concept. But the little details that we always talk about, the characters in there were
mhm,
lovely. Um, and they just picked apart the whole pirate concept and
mhm.
added this fantastical world, and
Mhm.
that's what made it unique. Yeah,
So
that's what we need to do. Yeah,
right. So since you
yeah,
mentioned, making interesting characters and creating
yeah,
fantastical worlds, the next step that you kind of go down would be, taking down the character bios and information, all of that. Kind of go over that
yeah.
for us.
Okay, yeah, we definitely don't want to skip that because once you do that research and you make it your own,
Hmm.
and by now you've already got a concept of who your main character is.
Hmm.
So there are usually about seven important questions you want to answer about that character. And I'm not talking about the external stuff, how he looks or how she looks, um, what they like, what they sound like. All that stuff is great to know, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not super important.
Mm-hmm.
The important stuff is, and of course I don't have my questions next to me, but who is the character? And when you say who is the character, you want to get his name. What do they do? Um, maybe where they live, but basically who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Name and what they do. Um, what do they want? Why and what do they want should be an internal and an external want. Why do they want it? Internal and external want. How do they go about getting it? What are the consequences? No, my fault. What stops them? What are the
Mm-hmm.
consequences? And and what are the stakes?
Okay.
I think those are consequences. And then themes. And I always say three themes just in case. I think three is a sweet number, but three themes of that character only.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
themes I really want to kind of focus on a little bit because that part really helped when I was coming up with the character of Lionheart. And I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out, okay, like who is this character and all of that. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, what are her themes? And
Right.
for those of you who don't know, the themes for Lionheart really focus and center around revenge,
Mm-hmm.
processing grief, and then also its identity. Um, and a lot of the stories that I'm going to be dealing with in the Divergent Comics universe is going to really center around identity, which I feel like is a big, I don't want to say issue, but a big obstacle in
Mm-hmm.
communities of color, just because that
Mm-hmm.
tends to happen a lot where people's like, I don't really know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I really wanted to focus on as a theme for most of the characters. So kind of dive into themes a little bit for us.
So the themes are almost like the themes are like your guidance for your character because just like you said grief, revenge, and what was the third one again?
Identity.
Identity. So those three themes help guide your story. It help guide your the story arc of that character and the
Mm-hmm.
direction that they go. You know, where are they starting off on the scale? Are they down here and they have to learn their identity, or do they have to become less of who they are?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Revenge. Are they revengeful and have to become less humble, or are they humble and they become revengeful? And so those are things like you're sitting there, those become the compass of the character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are very important. Um,
Yeah. And
so
those
I
are
want to get
separate from the actual story because
right.
the actual story could have three different themes, or it can have a similar theme, but your characters will have their own themes, each one of your
Exactly.
characters. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's key for people to remember to know the difference in because if you go in thinking, well, the themes of my character are this, so every book has to be about this, it kind of makes your story stale. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't give you much wiggle room if you go in with that mindset. Um,
Right.
this next one, I think people are going to kind of have some pushback on, but this next one is about getting an editor. So
Mm.
let's talk to the people about that one.
Mm. Now, I was one of those people when I did my first comic. I didn't believe I needed an editor because I said, "Oh, I write good. You know,
Yeah,
I'm a good creator, and but there's gonna be stuff that you don't catch.
yeah,
There's gonna be stuff that if you don't have that editor or at least a friend that's super close to being an editor that you can bounce ideas off of, where they understand what's going on, then there's gonna be it's gonna be like how Marvel is sometimes, where you're like, well, hold up, why did Marvel do that? And then in the next movie, you're like, oh, well, remember last movie they did this, that like
yeah,
it ain't lining up, and so your story will start to do something like that, or and I see this a lot too. I see a lot of recycled dialogue in comics,
Yeah.
indie comics, things like that, recycled dialogue from movies.
Hmm.
And let me give an example, like I, I don't know, something that just seems so cliche. Oh, and this is another shot where we see the heroes standing on top of the building all the time, like Batman or Spider-Man. I see that a lot, you know.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, I actually used it one time, and I said, "Well, why am I doing this?" Because I seen it, and then when I see it in everybody else's book, I'm like, "Well, dang, everybody's doing this,"
Right.
and so it, that originality. What if you took that same, you want to be on that rooftop, maybe give it a different dynamic angle,
Hmm.
give them something, like do something different with it. Not saying that you
Right.
shouldn't do that same shot, but do something different with it. I
Right.
took a concept of the captivating light. He's around Spider-Man's age, around 16, 17, something like that. And so, as Spider-Man loves hanging up toward top of buildings with book bags and stuff on.
Hmm.
I have a picture with my character on a crane. Um, some construction is happening. He's up there sitting next to a window on his phone with a Limelight book bag on. And I'm like, oh man, this looks cool. But then when you see it with Spider-Man, and you see other people doing it in their comics, you're like, man, it just looks like
Doesn't seem as
not a
cool.
ripoff, but it's, yeah. And so um I said, I gotta really think outside the box coming up, for stuff like that.
Right.
Um but an editor should catch that type of stuff, and you want a creative editor.
Right.
That's the thing you really want, more than just somebody who's going to check your grammar and all that, because you have Grammarly to do that nowadays.
Hmm.
Uh, but you want a creative editor, someone who's a visionary, who's going to see where you're trying to go, or understand where you're trying to go, and say, okay, you know what? I think maybe you can add this to the story, or I see where you're trying to go. What about this? Um, so you definitely want a visionary editor, and one, even if somebody who doesn't understand the genre, that visionary will understand something a little deeper than just that genre,
Hmm.
and that visionary can still go back and learn that genre, because it don't take that much. Like learning something doesn't take that much, at least
Hmm.
not for me. So you go back and you study and say, okay, well, let's do this, and do that, and that's the type of editor you want, a visionary.
Yeah.
You want a Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Exactly. You want someone that's
Yeah.
going to see, and this is the thing that I realized after I did the Charger book the first time. It's like you want someone that's going to see what you're trying to go for,
Hmm.
and then be like, okay, I see your vision, I see the idea, I see the concept. Let's tweak a few things and let's make it better. And
Hmm.
after I released the first Charger book, that's when I got linked up with you, and we essentially went to work. And you gave me homework every time we met. Every week I had to do something to kind of make the book a little bit better. And it got to the point where we not only fixed that first book, but now we have the full 12 issues of that first story arc fully outlined out. And I'm working on the second issue of that story arc at this time to make its release coming in the near future. So, seeing all of that is just like you have to have that editor there, or else your story is going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. The editor, a lot of times I may be scared to say something to people. I'd be like, and the thing I gotta really look at sometimes is this just my style, or is
Hmm.
this really gonna help their story? And
Right.
so there's a difference in that. And that's what editors got to understand. Is this just something that I would do? Because technically, 99% of the time, it probably is something that the editor would do.
Hmm.
It's the editor's style. But at the same time, it's like, well, I see where he's going. I don't want to put my style in, but let's enhance the style that he has.
Yeah.
So the editor has to be willing to put aside any feelings and ask questions. And that's super important because
Mm-hmm.
I'm meticulous for the little details, and I'm gonna ask questions. Well, why does this person do this? Oh, well, what about like, oh, the other thing I don't like really is the whole onesie type of costumes,
No,
like from the
no,
90s. Like
we
I
don't like
used to
those.
like that stuff until Marvel started coming out with more functional costumes on, in their movies, like Scarlet Witch. She had the onesie,
Right.
but now I was like, I didn't know you can
That's
do that. Like you could just change them, like, yeah.
right.
And so that changed my whole concept of functional costumes in the comics from the beginning.
Right. Yeah, definitely agree
Yeah,
with you on that.
yeah.
So we'll put a pin in it for this section of the series. We'll be back uh, again shortly with the second part to this, where we finish up talking about going from outline to first draft, then from first draft to second and third draft, getting that down. And we'll also talk about getting with an artist if you're not a artist yourself. So, David, tell the
Hmm.
people where they can find Limelight and you on social media.
I'm at limelightcomics.com. I'm at Facebook. Type in Limelight Comics. Instagram. I don't really use Instagram or Threads. What's the other one? YouTube. You can find
Yeah,
me at Go Qreate, which is GoQreate.
nice. Go give him a follow on socials. He has great content, honestly, and get his book, Conquered Crowns. It's really good. Hopefully, sometime within the next year or so, we'll be getting a book two from that. But overall, give him a follow, and we'll be back with another episode of creating comics. Uh, until next time.
And right
Oh,
and
go ahead.
right now, the comic is Conquered Crowns is free on limelightcomics.com.
Even better, even better. So y'all have no excuse not to read it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
until next time, it's been the Divergent Comics YouTube channel.